Hello, everybody. A good Erev Shabbos. Thanks for tuning in, and welcome to another Kehillat Shari Torah virtual Shabbos Drasha. Imagine you've been on a long and somewhat uncomfortable journey that took you a lot longer than you thought it would. There were many stops and starts along the way, many more than you thought there would be, and a number of harrowing incidents along the way. Some stretches of the trip were downright uncomfortable, and oftentimes you wished it would be over already. So now there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You can see your destination finally coming into view, not too far ahead. If you've ever experienced that feeling, now you have a good sense of where we were, where Bnei Yisrael were, as this Parsha, our Torah reading for this week, for the concluding the book of Numbers, Chumash B'Midbar. It's actually a double Parsha, Matos and Masei. And here we finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. After 40 years in the desert, 2 centuries of enslavement in Egypt, we see the promised land. Israel is straight ahead. Just one more little thing. You have to listen to one more rabbi's sermon, one more drasha from Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, whatever it is, anything. Let's just get it over with so we can get home and get on with our lives. I'm not sure anyone at the time imagined that a rabbi could talk for a month straight. That's about the length of the book of Devarim, but now we know. Okay, more about that when we get to Deuteronomy in weeks to come. But for now, we're concluding the story of the Exodus from Egypt and the sojourn in the desert, which is the last steps, our last steps before we enter into the land of Israel. Even though I got away without taking physics in high school, I do know there is such a thing as inertia. In fact, we can probably think of a dozen examples in everyday life. Inertia is the propensity of a body to continue its existing state of rest or motion until another force acts upon it. In human terms, we call this complacency. Unless some force acts upon us, we tend to retain either our forward motion in a straight line or our state of rest. That's the way human nature is. That's the way life is. In many ways, that's the situation we're in now, in this strange and unsettling, upsetting, abnormal pandemic situation that, although under control to a large extent here, doesn't seem ready to disappear anytime soon. Journeys, transitions, recoveries, changes are not always fast. Sometimes they're much slower than we'd like. Sometimes they're agonizing. And not every time we set out do we reach our destination, much less reach it on time. Much less taking precisely the route that we'd mapped out for ourselves. In any case, if we're able to appreciate the journey and what happens along it, not just as getting somewhere, but the quality of how we get there, then the journey takes on meaning and becomes worthwhile also. There's a famous medrash. I know it's famous because I saw it mentioned in 2 places. A king once needed to take his son who was ill, to a distant place which was renowned for its curative powers. So they set out on the trip, and sure enough, they accomplished the goal. The son was healed. And when they returned home, back to the palace, the king, with his healthy son, came back to their castle. The king persisted in recounting the steps of the journey in fine-grained detail. This is the place where we stayed, and we met such and such. We ran into somebody we knew there. This is the place where we enjoyed a banquet. Here's where my son said to me such, and so on. He recalled not only the trip, but each seemingly small and apparently insignificant stage in the journey with love, with purpose. The Medrash says this is why our Parsha mentions each place where the Jewish people stopped on the way out of Egypt, headed for Israel. 42 journeys, 42 stops on our way out of Egypt, and each one of them is mentioned. Now the Mefarshim, the Parsha commentators, take the trouble to explain what it was that we learned at each and every stop along the way. So you can look that up if you're interested, to uncover the deeper meaning of the entire travelogue. Just to remind ourselves of a few examples, Akeda explains that Pi Achiros was where we expressed longing to go back to Egypt, but the sea split for us there, and we witnessed and we showed our newfound appreciation for God's protecting us. At Mara, we couldn't drink the water. That's where we learned to make bitter things drinkable. Refidim is where we learned that water could come from a rock. Sinai, Mount Sinai, of course, is where we received the Torah. Chatzeros was where the Korach incident took place, and so on. Each step, each point along the journey was significant and important in our development as a nation. Each little sub-journey also brought us closer to the destination of the land of Israel, and each incident also developed another part of our personalities and our character as a nation. So let's look over our immediate past, our journey. Now, it's already 4 months that we've been on this strange and unexpected journey of isolation and quarantine. 4 months hardly compares to 40 years, but certainly some of the days seem pretty endless. What have we learned? It seems that we at Kehillat Shari Torah were among the very last shuls of Toronto to close down, for better or worse. So on Shabbos Zachor, right before Purim, we learned that sometimes it's hard to figure out what's coming next. If you can imagine ourselves all the way back in March, who knew how this would all play out? In any case, we did learn to savor the moment. We enjoyed that wonderful Shabbos together, and we celebrated Purim as it's supposed to be, with good times and good friends. Well, the next Shabbos, we were already in lockdown. Our last minyan in Shul until today was for the first yortzeit of Lou Silver, alav shalom, our dear Gabbai. We learned at that time we should take every opportunity that comes our way to say l'chaim in memory and in appreciation of those who helped us along our journey. In the weeks after that, we prepared for Pesach, and it was the time we thought we should avoid the crowds in the grocery stores. But what are we going to do? Pesach is the peak of our grocery shopping year. So we sought out alternate times. We learned to rely on others for help. We called for delivery. We did our best. But that was nothing compared to the Seder. Let's not rub it in too much, because hopefully it's all past us. But we did spend Pesach making the Seder in a way that we never thought we would. Many of us alone, without extended family, without our circles of friends, without the smiling faces around the table that make the Seder night so special, so memorable year to year. This year was memorable in another way, not one that we'd be very eager to repeat, but let's appreciate what we accomplished. Even though it's not what we wanted or what we hoped for, first of all, we made the Seder. Did we have exactly the people around the table that we wanted? Probably not. Did we have precisely the ingredients we needed to make precisely the favorite dishes as they should be? Probably most of us had to sacrifice a little bit on our ideal of what the perfect Seder meal would look like. But we did it. And we made our way through the Haggadah, and it's probably fair to say that the fewer people at our Seder table, the more focused we were on the Haggadah itself. When there's 25 or 50 or 75 people around the Seder table, you can tune out, you can space out for a few minutes. And if you lose your place, somebody will remind you what page we're on or when it's your turn to read. But when there's a crowd of 1 or 2 or 3, everybody has to keep up. And it doesn't matter how late the Seder went. It's fun to compare, but that's not really the point. The point is how involved, how into it we were as we went through the Haggadah, and as the Haggadah went through us. We lived through Sfirat HaOmer. We counted via the internet, through videos, text reminders, whatever gimmicks we used to remember which day was which, but we were indeed counting up to Shavuot, as it should be. Usually we have other people in the minyan, somebody makes an announcement, others we run into here and there, remind us of which day of the Omer is, but in this inside-out world that we've been living in lately, counting the Omer was one of the best things we could do to make sure that every day, in fact, counted. And every day was something different and unique from all the days that came before or after it. Shavuot is supposed to be the holiday of standing together at Sinai. So how could we do it? We asked ourselves, how are we going to do it without shul, without a minyan, without cheesecake, without each other? Well, most of us got a hold of some cheesecake somehow or other, and we did have each other. Again, we connected through Zoom, by email, by phone, and other virtual tools, and we held each other close even though we were at a distance. We did stand together at Sinai on Shavuos to receive the Torah. We just did it this year from the comfort of our living rooms, that's all. We davened our best, we learned our best, and although we missed our all-day learning celebration and our wonderful Torah Tours Ruach team, we still learned a lot. We took in a lot from videos and all the things that we learned, Divrei Torah, from numerous members of the extended KST family. And again, we did our best. Now we're in Bein HaMetzarim, the 3 weeks, the sad part of the summer, we're supposed to feel exiled, isolated, anguished. Hey, at this point, isolation and exile, it's our middle name, right? This Shabbos and Shul, we would be blessing the month of Av, which begins next Tuesday night and Wednesday. For those keeping track at home, the Molad, the reappearance of the new moon in Jerusalem, the eternal and undivided capital of Israel, will take place this Monday afternoon at 1:10 and 15 parts. The Molad wird sein in Yerushalayim, Montag nach Mittag, 10 Minuten mit 15 Chalakim nach einer Zeger. This month, the month that's beginning this week, the month of Av, is the saddest month. Tisha B'Av, the 9th, is the destruction of the place that we hold dearest in our hearts, the temple in Jerusalem, the heart of the city, the heart of the country, the heart of the people. Yet even in that sadness and destruction, we know that all is not lost. First of all, we're still here. When the second temple ceased to be 1,930 years ago, 1,950 years ago, we moved into a mode of virtual Judaism that still to this day sustains us. No animal sacrifices, prayer. No Korban Pesach, no Paschal sacrifice, a Seder with a shank bone on the plate. No pilgrimage to Jerusalem, so we celebrate wherever we are. We say Ya'aleh V'Yavo. No Jubilee year, but we sound the shofar anyway. A lot of Judaism has to do with memory. We keep the memory fresh. We keep it before our eyes all the time, so that when all is restored, we'll remember what to do, because we've invested so much of ourselves in being it all along the way, even when conditions were less than ideal. That's precisely what we're doing now. After Av comes Elul, the month of preparation for the high holidays, and after Elul comes Tishrei with the Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkah, Simchas Torah. How's that going to be this year? It's going to be great. It's going to be spiritual, it's going to be uplifting, and it's going to renew us. How will it look? We don't know yet. We have to figure out what kind of minyanim we'll be able to offer in Shul, and what we can possibly do in advance via the internet to prepare ourselves. And when we do plan, we have to be prepared for changes. We heard this week that in some cities in the U.S., they've already closed down the indoor minyanim that they just opened a few weeks ago because this virus shows no signs of letting up there. And Israel, of course, as you see in the papers, has its own problems. The important things to remember are that we're all in this together, the entire Jewish people, just as we've always been. And we have to be on the lookout, we have to be on guard for complacency, inertia, as ever. Complacency will say to us, there's nothing special about today. Complacency will tell us, what's the difference? There's no point in davening if you can't go to shul. Complacency and inertia will tell us, yesterday wasn't great, why should today be any different? That's not who we are. Some wise person once told me that a Jew is someone who never takes yes for an answer. Whatever it is today, whatever the situation is, however long the journey has been, we know it can get better, and it should get better, starting tomorrow and all the days after that. And maybe most importantly, we know we have a hand in making it so. So, in these hottest, longest, slowest days of summer, let's promise ourselves not to let complacency and inertia get the better of us. Each of us in our own way, change something that's been waiting, make something better, make something deeper, make something more meaningful in our lives, in our daily lives, week to week. And from there, we move onward to bigger and better things. May this certainly be the last Shabbos Mevarchim we spend in this COVID exile. May the month of Av be transformed into Menachem Av, a month that comforts us and lifts us up and brings us many steps closer to our ideal destination. Chodesh Tov, Shabbat Shalom.